Welcome to the Patient Voice Podcast, a platform dedicated to amplifying the patient voice throughout clinical development.
Hi everyone, I have the pleasure of being your host today. I'm Naomi Litchfield, Director of Patient Advocacy at Bionical Emas. We're a global contract research organisation, also known as a CRO. So welcome to our first episode of the Patient Voice Podcast. This series has been created to highlight the amazing work that is happening in practice to include patient voices in clinical development, having a positive impact on current and future patients and families all over the world. Today's topic is co-creation. We will be discussing a co-creation of a clinical trial by a pharmaceutical company, 4 international patient groups, also known as PAGs, and a CRO, which you may have guessed is Bionical Emas. I'm so excited for you all to meet our guest speakers today. I've had the privilege of working with them for over a year now, navigating the co-creation of a clinical trial. It's been a real honour to lead the patient PAG calls, and I'm delighted to hand over to our first PAG guest speaker, Shelly. Please may you introduce yourself for the audience listening and tell us what motivated you to participate in co-creating a clinical trial.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I'm Shelly Meitzler, the Director of Outreach and Support at the TSC Alliance, which is based in the United States. I'm also a parent, so 2 of my 3 children are living with TSC. Our family's lived experience highlights the importance and the value of research, and this was the perfect opportunity for early pre-engagement with the team for a clinical trial. I think my son's trajectory of TSC is vastly different than my dependent adult daughter as a direct result of knowledge and insight that's been gained from research over the last 10 years.
Thank you so much, Shelly. And I'm going to come to Pooja.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. My name is Pooja Takhar. I'm the Joint Chief Exec at the Tuberous Sclerosis Association, which is based in the UK. It's been a pleasure to be involved in this clinical trial. The motivation for me and for my community has been to make sure that the study had meaningful endpoints that benefit TSC community directly. So bringing that patient voice to the clinical trial has been my prime motivation to be part of it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm coming to Lisa next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Moore-Ramdin. I'm a pediatrician by background, but I'm also the Global Medical Director of an international pharmaceutical company. I'm based in the UK, but it's a global role. So my motivation for co-creation is just the frustration I have experienced seeing clinical trials being designed for regulatory approval, which makes no value for the patients at the end of the study. So just trying to get those insights and collaborating from early makes a huge difference to company strategy, getting it right the first time and making sure that everybody gets what they need at the end of the trial.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Looking forward to hearing more of that today. And Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Zanker, Medical Affairs Operations Director at Bionical Emas, the CRO, and I'm based in the UK. So in my mind, the co-creation with patient communities makes absolute sense. It ensures the research is relevant and it means something to a patient. And then this, therefore, is going to drive more meaningful drug development.
Thank you, Sue. So I'm going to come to Lisa first. So Lisa, with your vast experience in co-creation of clinical trials with patient advocacy groups, could you tell us why it's important to start that engagement early?
Yes, I think in the past, academically, we've tried to define early as probably phase 2 or phase 3 concept design. That, to me, is still too late. I think companies need to understand that if you don't start looking at patients' unmet need from the time you discover a molecule, that, when you start designing a phase 1 or phase 2 trial, even in healthy volunteers, by then you should really have an idea of what direction you need to go to make sure the trials are designed for patients and make sure the regulators understand why we have chosen this particular design, because there is a disconnect sometimes. So there's no such thing as ever too early. And healthcare professionals working with patient groups and with pharma can make a huge difference to how we move forward, spending lots of millions of dollars, but for the right reasons and for the right design.
Thank you, Lisa. I think I'm hearing loud and clear, never too early to engage with the patient community. So I know Pooja and Shelly have a lot to share with us today. So if I come to Pooja first with your valuable experiences that you've had, and why is it important to be invited to co-create early, and what does that mean to you?
I think it was really good that the sponsor company understood the importance of patient voice in co-creating this clinical trial, because, and I think Lisa will agree with me that this voice has helped the company understand not just the disease or the condition-specific challenges, but bottleneck in the current treatment pathways as well. So that, for me, is quite an important benefit of involving patients right from the beginning. We've also worked together. We've had lots of meetings. We've done the study design together. So we know that it's been done with the patients, so it's less burdensome study protocol, not just for the patients, but for the healthcare professionals who have to deliver that as well. Talk through the inclusion/exclusion criteria. And again, we know that the endpoints are the points that are directly relevant to the patient. So again, this has been a direct benefit of involving patients right from the beginning. So I think another important thing about clinical trials is the recruitment and retention. And again, by having very meaningful endpoints and having designed the study protocol with the patients, it helps in recruitment and retention as well. So I think those are kind of the direct benefits that early input from patients has direct to the study or to the clinical trial.
Thank you so much, Pooja. So yeah, that's great context of getting the involvement with the inclusion/exclusion criteria, and working from the beginning, not just as a review process. And Shelly, I'm sure you've got some more examples, of what's made a real difference to the patient community and to your organisation. Having that input from the early design stage, and what differences it's made to the families participating in the clinical trial.
Yes, I think, when you understand the unmet needs of the community and making sure early on that those align with really the goals and the aim of the study, I think that really helps us to understand, is this something that's realistic, that families are looking for, that the materials are easy to understand? We had different languages that, we had to be mindful of, as well as that the requirements are easy for families, right, to enroll and be able to successfully get through to the end, to maximize and optimize the participation and really the outcomes of the trials. And I think when our families and our community has a voice at the table very early on, that buy-in is there really to see it through till the very end. Even as we come against different hurdles and challenges, we were able to identify what might be some barriers. How can we work around those to make sure that the goals of the study are being met, but that it's still easy and accessible to our families? And I think being able to really have those conversations and those check-ins throughout the course of the design and the creation of the trial is what will help determine that long-term success for the study as well as for our participants in the community.
Thank you so much, Shelly. It's fascinating and great to hear that that's taken on board. So back to you, Lisa. So from your perspective, was there any challenges with collaborating and getting internal buy-in is having that managing expectations from everyone, from all the different stakeholders? And yeah, I think we just all love to hear any examples or insights that you can share of challenges you might have encountered and how you overcome them.
Yeah, I think I've encountered quite a few challenges in my career, especially in the old days, when depending on the culture of the company and how big the company is, they may or may not necessarily understand or appreciate how important it is to have patient advisory boards, for example, because a lot of the time they're driven by the commercial need, right? Shareholders want instant access to funds, and the only way you're going to get that is by selling a medicine. But you have to design clinical trials way in advance to get there. So everything you do within the medical team perspective is really time pressured. So getting them to understand that we need that input from the beginning that will pay off dividends later on for all stakeholders is important. One of the main challenges I've had really is getting the commercial part of organizations to understand what design would be the least burdensome for patients and for healthcare professionals, because the design itself may not give the endpoints that they think is important for them to get approval, or for them to get return on investment. And striking that balance, I see as my role is important here. Luckily, the company I work with were extremely open-minded and empowered us as a medical team to make those decisions. Yes, there are a bit of back and forth behind the scenes, but they listened. And that's the first step, really. And I think finally we're in a place where they let us do what we have to do to make it right. If you're going to say you're a patient-centric company, you need to actually live and work those values.
Thank you, Lisa. That's great perspective. And yeah, really important to live and breathe that patient-centric mentality. So Sue, coming to you now, of working for a CRO, can you share your perspectives of what's important when working on both behalf of the pharmaceutical company and working with the patient advocacy groups and collaborating and bringing those insights together?
Absolutely. Thanks, Naomi. So by using the CRO patient advocacy team, that really aids the collaboration between all the parties, especially when the project has started to be operationalised. So starting with a communication plan, we can set the scene there so everyone understands their role and all can agree on the best communication pathway moving forward. For example, the CRO patient advocacy team can chair and organise monthly meetings and they're also an integral part of the project team, and they can also ensure key messages and information are shared either by or on behalf of the pharmaceutical company. And it's vital to keep these communications going as the project evolves. So it shouldn't just be a review or a tick box exercise. This has to be a continual collaborative communication.
Great, thank you, Sue. And that's very true. So Lisa, is there anything more that you'd like to share of the implementation process? So, taking on board the patient advocacy feedback and any examples of that and what was changed?
Well, everything has changed as a result of that, to be honest. I was quite surprised at how different the trial execution would be with all the great advice we've had over time. You can't predict what sort of challenges you're going to have when you try to initiate a study. But every step of the way, the patient groups have been with us. And no matter how simple the advice is, it really pays dividends when you actually go out there and you try to execute. All our patient materials, for example, to support clinicians having conversations with caregivers who they're thinking would enroll in the study. Simple little things like that make a huge difference to the speed of enrollment, to the interest in enrollment in a study, and also with retention. One thing, for example, we decided to institute is developing personalized reports at intervals throughout the study so that patients and their caregivers could actually see, this is what I'm doing during the duration of the study. This is what is happening to me, and not just a whole anonymous group, that you will see at the end of a study report, for example. The study is about the individual. And that makes a huge difference. The patient becomes invested in the success of that trial. And that is how you get stakeholders involved.
Amazing. Thank you, Lisa. And Sue, anything else to add from CRO experience of watching this co-creation and being part of that collaborative pathway?
It's just been so enlightening and enjoyable to sort of have the different perspectives from the patient advocacy groups, the sponsors' needs for that drug development, and then being able to pull that together operationally and sort of be the link between the pharmaceutical, the CRO, and the patient advocacy group. So it's been a very positive experience. It would be great if co-creation was practiced more widely. And it's very encouraging and positive to see a definite movement in the right direction holistically as well amongst other pharmaceutical companies.
Absolutely. I'm certainly very proud to talk about this example when speaking to other companies and patient groups. So, Shelly, I'm going to come back to you. Why is feedback so vital in this co-creation, collaboration pathway? Why is it important for us to feedback and recognise and acknowledge?
So I think, again, understanding that what we kind of design and then seeing if it's able to be implemented in real life, and understanding that our caregivers and individuals are navigating life as well as TSC, as well as the trial. So I think, again, having those candid conversations to say, in theory, this looked like this might be really easy, but in the day-to-day of life, this wasn't as easy as I thought. And I think being able to hear that feedback, share it freely, and then make those modifications again to find that balance of we need to identify the end goal of our study and how do we do that, but balancing it again to maintain that participation and retention is that it has to be accessible and easy to do in real life. So I think being able to have those open conversations to say that and to be able to receive that feedback, again, appreciate for the medical team side as well as for the families identifying to say, I really want to help, but this is the way that I can help and this would make it easier to do that. And I think, again, you just get a better end result where all of the feedback has been heard and we can make those modifications to ideally be able to have a successful trial from start to finish.
Pooja, could you give us any other examples of how the feedback has changed part of the co-creation of the clinical trial?
Sure. I think one of the most relevant examples is when patient advocacy group and the healthcare professionals were looking at the study inclusion and exclusion criteria. And it was sent to the patients for review by the healthcare professionals or by the sponsor. And the main feedback was that one of the exclusion criteria was anybody with self-harm or suicidal tendencies should be excluded from the study. The main feedback from the patients was that this would actually not only exclude a big portion of the community from participating in the clinical trial, but it was also one of the critical endpoints that they wanted to address. So we fed back, the feedback was fed back to the company, to the healthcare professionals, and after deliberation, they decided that yes, it's an important factor, it's an important marker, and it should be included in the study. So I think that's a really good example of how feedback from the community has made a huge difference to the study protocol.
Amazing example. Thanks for sharing, Pooja. Amazing, thank you. And it's great to see you all collaborating on posters and publications together and sharing that great insight and experience. So in summary, I'm just going to come to you all now to share individually your narrative. So your why, just as we started today's episode, driving motivation for co-creating, participating in this co-creation. Why is it important to you? Why are you here today? What have you enjoyed? If I start with Pooja, that would be great. If you could share your perspective.
Thanks, Naomi. I think the major learning for me from this process has been the collaboration and having a seat at the table with all the other stakeholders. And also, I think the patient community has felt heard in this case. We've provided our feedback as requested, but we've also seen that the feedback has been taken into account, has been acted upon, has been, steps have been taken to implement and adjust the processes. It's been a very agile process. So for me, I think that's a great kind of a motivation to keep getting involved because we've actually, the community has felt heard. We know that through our feedback, through the community feedback, that we've increased the specificity of the study objectives. We've made it more relevant in terms of not just gathering data, but making sure that the inclusion-exclusion criteria, the study design, the protocol aligns with the unmet need, and hopefully that will help the clinical trial sites to execute the study better and bring a new treatment to the community. So that's always our motivation, that we're always looking for new treatments, new ways to help the community. So it'd be great to have another tool in the arsenal.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Pooja. Shelly, I'm going to come to you next. What's been your experience?
I would say similar, community collaboration updates. I think, the hardest part of living with a rare disease is that we all want and need the answers yesterday. So, it can seem very tedious waiting for completions of trials, the approval of medications for indications. And while families and individuals certainly understand that process, it still doesn't stop day to day the devastation that these manifestations can cause to families. So I really believe that there's comfort not only in being able to share our lived experiences, what works, what doesn't work, but understanding then some of the incremental progress that we're seeing. I think it helps us still have hope, knowing that, in the forefront, we're incrementally moving the needle forward for all those impacted by TSC. And it keeps that motivation and that determination to continue to all come together and collaborate and move the needle forward to the best of our abilities.
Thank you so much, Shelly. And Lisa, I'm going to come to you next. From your perspective, what's your narrative?
For me, as a pharmaceutical physician, I think the primary goal is to do no harm, right? As the first step. And I see in the past that I could have done harm by not listening, all right, by just being driven by commercial forces and not listening to who the end user of our products are or our strategies. So now for me, it's about bringing the patient voice into the company, and not just indirectly by being a mouthpiece, but literally bringing the patient voice in, working very closely with the patient groups from the beginning, letting them be part of our strategy and vice versa, and making it a true partnership. And that's the only way forward, really.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. And lastly, Sue, what's your narrative and why?
To me, it's the obvious and the best approach, the co-creation of a clinical trial. And the reason we do all of this is to improve the availability of treatment to patients. So they are the most important stakeholder, and they should be involved from the initial concept, even before the protocol, and right the way through the whole process. And also, just from the operational perspective as well, being very much part of those operational timelines and planning for that development and operationalisation study.
Thank you so much, Sue, and thank you so much to all of our speakers. I really appreciate your time and sharing all of those valuable insights.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you have any questions or feedback for Bionical Emas or any of today's speakers, then we'd love to hear from you. Please get in touch by emailing thepatientvoice@bionicalemas.com. We look forward to welcoming you back to our next episode, which will be out in June.